looked at the signups. I didn't even think of that. But I mean, if Brian Hart doesn't show up, then
Problem solved.
no harm, no foul. We'll just have a play reenactment of his video for him.
You guys hearing a fan? You hear a fan?
Yeah, I think it's you.
What? No, it's
Mute
not
for a
me.
second. Not you. Hunt it down.
Hey, Matt. Haven't seen you forever. How are you?
Yay.
Yeah, I just muted and unmuted and can still hear the fan. So
Oh boy. Who's got the fan? Get him, Patrick.
I think it's Ian.
Me? Sweet.
I hear it, so it's not me.
Yep. So Patrick, I just uploaded the list if you want to watch email for a bit.
Ryan, are you mining Bitcoin on your computer that's next to you?
email. Got the email. Got the email. Email.
That's true. That's true. That is pretty. Isn't that wild? What a crazy thing. The power of the internet.
Oh yeah, and you're supposed to talk to Matt about the thing I can't remember the name of. Siro.
It's Savant.
Siro.
No, it's
Siro.
Josiah. Sirach. Yeah, okay. I was gonna
See you, rat. See you, rat.
sewer rat. It's a sewer rat.
Not to be
Google
confused.
sewer rat.
I was earlier confused today with the game engine GoDat. It's not the same thing. Surat and GoDat are two different things.
One sec. One sec.
Yeah.
That's double
Man,
check.
I know what's going on over here. I'm muting. I'm muting.
The voice on today is
Yeah, you got to get her out of here.
his body just on a Scooby Doo.
Hey, Marty. Or what's our Twitch stream? I just got an email from someone asking about the
Yes, the Twitch stream is at twitch.tv/IGDATC.
Thank you.
And Patrick, there's another one from Brian Hart. I'm responding to that one.
Okay, I've got Michael.
Thank you.
Oh, now I'm watching on Twitch too. Okay. Wait a minute. Here I am. Yeah. I can be myself in third person. Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. All right. Hey, I'm back. Oh no. Shenanigans.
Oh, who all showed up here? Harry Paul. Ryan Schaefer, is that what you look like now? This is what I look like.
More or less. I'm not Santa though.
You're not Santa with rave pants?
Dang. I forgot what I'm wearing. Let me check.
It's quite the outfit.
I think they're talking about me.
You're wearing a Santa outfit.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. They're not rave pants, Mark. They have zippers. They're parachute pants.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember those. I wore those to school the first day of school.
Coming
year,
from
7th grade,
Mr.
maybe.
Def Leppard pants. Yeah.
That's true. They're cut up. That's right.
Yeah. Def Leppard pants. All right. Everybody make fun of Mark.
Hysteria. What are you doing, Zach? You getting people in or what?
Yeah, we just had an email. 2
Okay.
emails. But no, I saw the Twitch streams running fine. That's great. Thanks, Marty. Is there a second Marty in here? Or just one Marty tonight?
So far, anyway, it's just the one.
Okay.
Actually, I think I'd have to charge my Oculus, so probably just one all night.
All right.
Zach, is yours
Cool,
plugged in?
cool.
Remember last time?
It isn't. Maybe I'll get a longer cord. That's a great prompt. Anybody else in an Oculus? Yeah, think about cords and batteries.
We'll cord it up.
I don't know, battery like 10 minutes.
I just kicked my cat out because she doesn't respect boundary areas for VR.
Can't teach that.
Think behind cable.
Hey, Gaff.
Hello, Mark.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Was I sort of in your face a little while ago?
No, I think I just came over and said hi.
Like a little while ago, or just now?
A little while ago.
I tried to come in on my. I was eating my dinner on my PC.
Oh,
on
I see.
On my Mac. And
Okay. How did it work?
yeah, it's worked okay. When we were doing the Met, I played with it a bunch to sort of practice with it, but
Okay.
it takes over the screen. You know, if you forget your password, you can't just bring up, a file and look at it. I had to totally get out of it. It was very weird.
Gotcha.
And then I tried to use Twitch so I could listen to you guys chatting.
I'm here with the fan. What's up?
Yeah, who was the fan? I heard that part.
I'm the fan. What's up?
Biggest fan.
I'm on my riff downstairs by the AC. So I'm gonna switch to my rest.
Hi, Matt. Pretty good. So I logged on. It said there's 12 people in there, and 10 of them are your friends. So
In here?
Who's not my friend?
Hmm. Can everyone hear Matt okay? He sounds pretty choppy to me.
Yeah, Matt, you sound kind of wacky.
I'm weird. Not on the link.
Oh,
Like
you switched
slow.
to low bandwidth voice.
That's what it sounds
I don't
like.
thi- Yeah.
So I think
I don't remember.
How do you do that? Is that a settings thing?
No, that's magical and permanent. I don't remember if you have to actually quit the app or if you can just go to your home room and come back.
Alright, let me make sure.
It is funny.
It sounds like you've
Yeah,
been
that
really
is
top for a couple hours.
I mean, this app really is thought through pretty well. It's hard to imagine there's any weird oddities with it at all. Anyway.
So weird. So weird.
Let's see. Did Brian Hart make it in here? Brian.
You just gonna
Brian,
break
are
his
you on
heart?
Twitch? Brian.
I'm clicking on everybody. I don't see any Brians.
I didn't either.
No.
Did you come to the Met, Mark?
I did the early tests.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This whole like the control panel here under the screen is reminding me of Zach and I testing Alt Space
Oh,
to
yeah.
see if we could use it, and I'm reliving the fear.
I can fill you in. It's real awkward, but yeah, I got slides
Zach and
in. So
Zach and I tried it for a couple days. Like,
Yep.
okay, now you do this. Oh, I'll go back and try that.
yeah.
Yeah, and then Mozilla Hub wound up working pretty good.
They
Perfect.
just redesigned
Way
Mozilla
better.
Hubs.
And so it doesn't
Yeah.
work anymore?
I don't know. It's a redesign, so I'm not sure if it's better or worse or just different. You know,
It's a big fan.
So now you're breaking up. Can you hear me okay?
you sound good to me. Yeah.
You're starting to sound a little bit like Matt.
Okay.
Sound fine to me, though.
And you sound just fine now too, Matt.
You sound good. Yeah, you sound good now, Matt.
Sweet.
So what do the 3 dots above somebody's head mean?
You're talking.
They're. Yeah.
Audio is emitting from their direction.
Wow.
Or fan.
They're making fan noises. Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even have to add that.
Whoa.
That's it. I'm changing. I'll be back.
Zach's got that hangdog look that you have when you're trying to do stuff on your computer.
Yeah, he had just disappeared too. I think.
Just now.
Yeah.
Okay, now can people hear me? Yeah.
I hear you, Ryan.
Thanks, Marty.
I hear your voice, Ryan. I don't see you. There you are.
Ciao.
With you in the back, Ryan?
Yep. I'm on my PC. Not VR today.
Brian?
I just
Say
get
something.
stuck when I'm in it too long.
All right. Well, I think we're going to get rolling here because we got a good amount of content. Brian, if you can hear me on the Twitch, just shoot me an email or hop in here and we can chat about it. And I sent you one more email. So if you are here tonight, it's very likely because you saw Marc present in the past. He does these wonderful, beautiful, exquisite, knowledgeable presentations. And then I subjected him to alt space presentations, and he took it like a trooper. And we'll let him rant a little more about that. But
Did he do the work, or did you assist, or how'd that process go?
He did the work, yeah. And I falsely told him that he could edit his own JSON file and then upload it, which that worked in November. It doesn't work now. So the other thing that worked in November was YouTube and doesn't work now. So if Brian makes it in the room.
So how do you do it now without the JSON files? Or
you do it inside a web page. 998 times? You do it.
94, yep.
Yep, all right.
Good times.
So-
Screen here.
Is like the worst web interface from like the early 90s is still here. So yeah, but hey, we got content in there, so hopefully it'll be good, right?
Yeah, and it does look good once it's running. And there is hope in the future. They've released a browser plugin that they say can stream in here, and I wasn't about to test that right before a meeting. But it's supposed to work everywhere except on Macintosh clients, which hopefully they will get to in the future. So there's always a catch. But oh yeah, and the best part of my rant was on December 22nd, they talked about that new plugin, and then 4 paragraphs down, they said, oh yeah, and we took away YouTube, effective January 1st. So if you were checking out their blog every day on Christmas vacation and read all the details, you would have known YouTube was going away. Otherwise, you wouldn't know until you tried to use it. But I guess that's recorded for the record. Sorry, Microsoft. Okay, so we didn't have Brian was our only plug officially, but is there anybody that wants to verbally plug an upcoming event for the crowd, for the audience? Okay, great. Well then, Mark, if you can make your way to this, what? Well, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. In case you didn't read the agenda for tonight, the second talk is about the Global Game Jam.
Oh, all right. Never mind. I'll start paying full attention now.
And everybody who's been going to the IGDA knows that the regular IGDA knows that Marty plans really far ahead.
Minutes sometimes.
There's a dog pile. Get him. Get him.
A whole minute or two, you know.
But
I'll shut up now.
I'm sorry I started that. So Mark, yeah, if you're ready, you can take it away. You're going to try using the laser pointer?
Sounds good. Well, see if it works, right?
Excellent.
It might be good
Yeah.
for something, I guess.
If
Hey,
you
everyone.
accidentally drop it, it reappears right on the podium or on the shelf of the podium.
Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
Yep.
I got to get this stuff out of here. Okay, there we go.
And let us know too
Yeah.
if you can't hear Mark or if there's any other
Yeah.
kind of issue, just speak up, including questions at any time.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. One thing I would say is I'm on a Quest 2, but this works on a Quest 1. Some of the text here may look kind of fuzzy and aliasy. If you go into your menu settings, you can actually improve that. I just want to let you know before. It makes readability of this kind of stuff way better. But if you go into settings and then click display, there's an anti-aliasing option you can set and a in-world render scale option. And I wouldn't recommend going more than this, but for anti-aliasing, you can set it to 2x MSAA. And in-world render scale, I have mine set to 1.4, but 1.2 or something like that also works really well. So if you haven't done that, it'll probably make a huge difference in readability, legibility.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm on a Quest 1, and
Yep.
I've always done this at 4x and at 1.6, and it works fine. So
Awesome. Okay.
Well, except you said it crashes as soon as you do it.
Well, when you change it to 1.6, it crashes, and then you have to just come back in. But
Gotcha.
it only
Okay.
happens the first time, and you know.
Yeah, I
And
think
also
I got
just-
up to that point and throttled it back a little bit, you know?
Okay. I'm
You can also
on the
just
edge.
you can also just move closer too if you want a better view of a certain slide. Don't be shy.
For sure.
Wander around the room.
Cool. Well, so I put all these slides up. Everyone can see slide 2 here. It's a different slide. And if somehow something doesn't happen, let me know. But okay. Hey, I'm Mark. I work at Space 150. We're an agency in Minneapolis here. We have offices in New York and LA too. Wait, that's my Twitter and Insta info. I'm not super active posting, but I'm there and reading and consuming it a lot, and would love to talk. All right. So before I talk about LiDAR, I want to time travel back a bit. So I turned 50 this year, and it's kind of made me think about kind of the early things. And for those of you who remember, this is an Apple II computer. And when I was like 9, so it was like 1979, 80, something like that, my dad brought home an Apple II, and it just friggin' blew my mind. And that's probably why I'm here today, is I just saw the thing. I was like, this is incredible. And I started thinking about how I got interested in kind of computer graphics and this kind of stuff. And this little program here is just basically to draw a triangle. And I just kind of wrote this again. This is just AppleSoft Basic, and it was just stuff you had to figure out, and we all learned from each other. But drawing this one little pattern, one little triangle created this interesting moire pattern, and it has some really deep implications of how computers work and how lines are drawn and how these weird old CRT displays work. And I bet Gaff could go on about that a lot, right, Gaff?
Okay.
Maybe? Yeah.
No,
about like the intricacies and complex things of...
Because this young guy I've known for a million years just turned 50, so...
Yeah. But it brought me into like capturing things. And I remember a friend and I were hanging out on Friday night, and I hauled my Apple II over to his house, which was a big production. But we found this magazine in the library, and I think it was actually this exact one, which is kind of crazy. I found it. And it was an audio recorder for the Apple II. And at this time, like, you just couldn't do stuff. Like, if you made it on a computer, it was bleeps and bloops, and you had to program it. And we looked at it, and it was like this little tiny bit of code. And I'm like, I can punch that in, like, no problem, not afraid. Be careful. We run home, we start doing this, and it's like, well, where do we type it in? And then there's this appendix in the magazine, and you have to type in all this, which is the program that allows you to enter the program. So it's like, oh, man. And you better not make one mistake, right? So this is before the internet and all that stuff, obviously. But we ended up doing it and recording it, and you could basically record 4 seconds of 1-bit audio. So it's the worst sounding thing you can imagine, but you could hear your voice in the computer. And it was capturing things from the real world, because I have worked a lot in creative places, but I'm not like an artist like that myself. So it's just really cool to be able to see things in the real world get into the computer, and that's kind of the talk of tonight. And another thing it made me think about was a thing called a thunder scan. And if you remember old dot matrix printers, you could basically, instead of an ink cartridge, you'd put the scanner in, and anything you could roll through your printer. I think the first thing I did was like a Guns N' Roses tape, cassette tape, like flyer thing. And it would do this really low res scan, but it was just kind of amazing too. So anyway, just thinking about the old stuff as we do this, and obviously capturing, like, digital photos have taken over the world, and we're taking, trillions of them a year, which is kind of insane. And it made me think back to a little bit to our phones. So this is I just took a screenshot from my iPhone. It's the 12 Max Pro, whatever that is. And this is a comparison to what the original iPhone in 2007, that's same pixel size. So basically you can fit about 2 icons on the current phone on this old phone. So it's just amazing how fast things progress. And what we're going to see tonight is like the start of something really exciting, but also really new and really early days. So things that you can kind of see today, I always like to think forward and like, where are these going to go? It's going to be insane. We're in for a pretty fun ride. So yeah, the whole LiDAR thing just got me thinking about things I've captured in the past. So a little trip down memory lane there. But now let's talk LiDAR. So yeah, it's 2020 and we literally have LiDAR on our phones. And obviously it's, 2021, but these devices came out last fall. But all this stuff's, kind of emerging right now. And LiDAR is conceptually a really simple thing. See, this is the thing that happened this week, so it's really current, right? Nice. And all it stands for is light detection and ranging. And basically a LiDAR sensor has 2 parts. And it has an emitter and a detector. And basically the emitter sends out a laser beam. That's the part of this laser. So it's going to send out a laser beam. And if it hits an object like Bernie there, it's going to reflect some of that light back. And that light that's reflected back is picked up by the detector. And what happens is you can basically do calculations. We know the speed of light, and we know how far it travels in a given amount of time. So basically these LiDAR sensors basically send out laser light, hit objects, send it back, and detect that. So it's an actively sent out signal that is then detected. And it's, like I said, conceptually pretty simple. And like most things in computer graphics and everything you're doing, it's been around for a long time. So it was invented in 1961 in a military contract scenario and was first used kind of publicly on the Apollo 15 mission to see how far the lander was above the moon's surface. And it was this big thing about the size of half a refrigerator. So, like most things, they've gotten a lot smaller. But always kind of interesting to see where things have gone. And you've probably heard about LiDAR a lot in the last 10 years or so due to autonomous vehicles or autonomous, cars specifically. And this is kind of a cool visualization of what a LiDAR sensor sees. This is just the raw data coming out of a LiDAR sensor into an autonomous vehicle. And what you'll see is it's a bunch of circles. Oh, go ahead. What was that? Did you say something?
Nope.
Okay. You'll see a bunch of these concentric circles out. And the reason is there's a LiDAR scanner on top, and it's sending out signals in one direction, detecting them, and it's rotating. So basically, it's getting a 360 view by having one set of kind of emitters, detectors that rotate around. And I think the interesting thing about autonomous vehicles is, it's easy for us to see, for instance, that, that's a big truck or a semi out of those point clouds. Like, we're really good at visually picking things up with a lot of missing information. But it's harder for vehicles to do that and harder for software to do that. But that stuff's getting figured out. And this is a good example of like the Waymo LiDAR equipped vehicle. And it looks like, you can think of it as like the light on top of a police car that spins around. So it's basically constantly sending out information, getting information back, and then doing things with that. Zach, anything else to add?
How does it
What's
handle
that?
the vertical? How does it handle
Zach,
the
feel
vertical?
free. Yeah, often it's an array of them, right? But go ahead, Zach.
Yeah. So the breakthrough for making them cheaper for phones was no moving parts and making a bunch
solid
of little
state
tiny guys and putting a whole bunch of them in there.
Yep.
The one on the top has like a central core that's in the part that's spinning, and then it can turn so many degrees so that the laser can actually start low and then go out. And that's why in that image you saw of the circle pattern, there's gaps that go out, and that's the angle that the laser is turning as it spreads out towards the horizon.
Yep. Yeah, and almost a year ago now, so March 2020, Apple released a refreshed round of iPad Pros. And in addition to the kind of near and far cameras and other sensors, there's a LiDAR scanner. And it's exactly what we kind of talked about. There's a sensor on top that emits laser light here. In this case, it's an array. Do you know offhand, Matt, I bet you know this offhand, how many it sends out at a given time? It's a pretty low resolution array.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number on that, but
I think
it's IR too, isn't it?
Yeah, yep, you can pick it up with IR cameras. So when you're moving the camera around, basically, this sends out a whole bunch of little tiny low power laser signals, and then it receives them back and infers information about the environment based on that. So pretty simple stuff, and you get dramatic headlines like this, right? Early LiDAR sensors used to cost $75,000. But this in no way compares to one on top of a vehicle. Those go for hundreds of feet. The one on your iPhone basically officially says 16 feet, but it's typically a little bit less than that.
And I think like the industrial LiDAR scanners are still $50,000 to $150,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have moving parts and they spin and they have all kinds of other settings there too, right? But again, the internet likes big headlines like this, but it is really true. It's the type of thing where, Zach, you had a phone that did early kind of environmental scanning. It was that weird Android phone. That was just multiple cameras, right? That was not LiDAR.
Oh, that little
correct?
tablet?
Yeah.
What was that called? Does anybody remember the first Google tablet for the
Tango?
Tango
tablet? That was a time of flight sensor, like a Kinect.
Yep. Gotcha.
So not LiDAR.
Not LiDAR, but similar kind of approach, similar goal done differently, right? And this is a good thing.
A 1 hour battery is what you got with that tablet.
Yeah, isn't that nuts? I remember scanning space. It was kind of cool. And I think a lot of times you can see something like that and go, this is cool. It's not ready for prime time yet, but we'll get there. And Apple is really good at taking expensive special things and bringing them into the mainstream, especially in terms of augmented reality here. So the current lineup of Apple devices that have this sensor built in are the 2020 iPad Pro, so the ones that came out last March, and then the iPhone 12 Pro models. And what Apple typically does is they put sensors that are going to be in the devices in the high end, and then they filter them down to the whole range. So already the rumors are flying that next year, all of their devices sold, all new devices created would have this sensor. Which is kind of amazing, right? So we can figure out what it's good for now, and then as we go forward, that stuff will start to scale more. So we're doing a bunch of work with these right now, and right now we're buying, for specific projects, we're buying iPad Pros. And there's a little difference there. The phones work great, the iPad Pros work great, they do the same thing. The iPad Pro has a better battery, a bigger screen, and it's got more high performance cores, so it typically does the work faster and better, but the phones really do a great job. So I've got a video here. This is just the scanning process, and let's see how this goes. So I have a video that's going to play next, but just in case somehow the video doesn't load. The process is pretty simple, basically. This is just I'm sitting in my kitchen, and I pulled out my phone and started an app, and I'll go through a few of the apps. And then the ARKit software, basically after just a second or so, and it's really fast with LiDAR, it figures out where you are, and it starts basically showing you that it understands the topology of the surfaces you're pointed at. And then you'll see this blue area. Those are parts I haven't scanned yet. So when you're doing a scan, you see through the camera, you see this geometry placed on top of the actual surfaces in the real world, and then you see what you haven't scanned yet. And it's up to you to just kind of like scan as far as you want, the whole room, the corner of the room, something like that. And then there's a processing stage. And for this example, I'm just going to hit play. So hopefully this plays. I think it might, depending on how fast your internet is, it might start a little bit differently, but it's about a minute long video page. I'm seeing a video here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I just recorded the whole thing, and then I sped up the processing a bit. But you can see with LiDAR equipped ARKit, which is the software foundation Apple's created, it is just super fast at determining where you are and what the world looks like. And you'll see it can struggle a little bit with corners. Shiny surfaces like this tend to be captured really well. Glass surfaces like microwaves and things like that aren't captured as well for sure. Another interesting thing to note is that you'll see really dense meshes at first. And then once it realizes like, hey, this wall is all one big kind of flat surface, it'll start simplifying the geometry. So it's doing a whole bunch of that in real time, which is kind of amazing to see. And this is so easy to use. And you can see on the floor, especially when I start walking back, how it starts simplifying that mesh too.
Do you know what the frame rate it gives you?
Texture on the surface.
I have a whole bunch of kind of behind the scenes of like what's captured, so it does actually grab that, yeah. The frame rate, the iOS devices run at 60 or 120 for the iPad Pros, and I think the screen runs at full speed, so it doesn't chug at all. It doesn't seem to, at least in my experience. And you'll see this processing capture going on. And at this point when you're done, if you see this part of the video, you'll see me kind of spin around the kitchen. Now I have this 3D textured model of my kitchen. And that whole process in real time was a little under 2 minutes. And what's kind of amazing about this is A, that you can do this. And then the second thing is that you can just share it. If someone else has an iPhone, I can text them. I'll go back here. Let's see, what's the next slide?
We had two questions at the same time. The second one was, what about untextured surfaces like your ceiling?
It captures those really well. And that's the thing. So with LiDAR, it's able to structurally see how far things are away. And I'll go into this a little bit, but rather than relying on, I've actually got a slide of this coming up here. Yeah, a little bit about how it works. And Zach, I know you know a lot about this too. So I'll talk about that. And one of the real big limitations of early ARKit and mobile AR things is that if you had shiny surfaces, glossy surfaces, things like that, or things just without a lot of texture, my house is very white. Those walls just wouldn't get picked up. But with the LiDAR sensor, rather than relying on the camera and the movement that you're making, it's able to basically determine exactly how far away points are and construct a version of the world much more accurately. And you can see this is an example from that scan. Of a point cloud I exported. So you can see the actual information it captures is very, very dense. So when
the pure like ARKit plane detection it's just visual. Whereas the LiDAR,
you're cutting out, Matt.
never mind.
Did you hear him?
I'll try and fix him. That's probably my internet.
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounded fine for
Fix
me.
your internet.
All right. I was just saying that the regular AR
Now you're better.
AR kit data is just optical, so it's just using visual inertial odometry to try and figure out where a plane is. And
Yep.
so then now they're augmenting that with the LiDAR, so they actually know when the light reflects off the surface where it is.
Yes.
And it doesn't need to see the texture on it at all. It just needs to see that the light
Yep.
reflected off that surface at whatever distance and came back to the sensor. So
Yeah, it's
that
less
allows the
about-
data to be more accurate.
Yeah, it's less about inferring things from the photo and the camera in motion and more about direct measurements of how far away is the surface at this point. So it's a real big difference, exactly.
Yeah.
And interesting to look at this, but this is the point cloud that comes out of it. So this is basically a look at the raw data that ARKit captures, and you can see how dense that is. And what happens is, as it's sending out that laser light, it hits a point, it captures it, and it also captures the color because it's got a camera that's pointing at that too. So basically you can see the color is kind of encoded here along with this point cloud. And then what ARKit does is it turns this into, go to the next slide here. It turns this into a higher level understanding of the scene. So what it does, it turns point clouds into triangles and a larger mesh like this. So this is a good example of almost a pure white surface. This is a little bar we have built in. And let me back that up and play that one again. But you can see what you get out of it isn't a point cloud, but it's these higher level primitives. So it's triangles basically organized into a mesh.
So would it know to draw polygons on the underside of that surface, even if you haven't scanned it? Like the underside of the top?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, if you don't do that, it'll be missing. So if it's important, it's definitely important to get above and below. And again, it's pretty early days here. It's definitely not, it's not perfect, but this is a good example of how it classifies objects differently. So it basically has a pretty decent understanding of the scene, and ARKit will natively tell you whether it's a wall, floor, ceiling, table, seat, door, or window. And it's able to classify every single point it hits into one of those ultimately. And this is just kind of a cool example of the floor, the wall, the ceiling are all different colors. So you can kind of see how it's classifying things like that.
Is there a minimum distance where the LiDAR doesn't work if you get too close?
It's like the cameras, it's pretty close. I think it's 10 millimeters, something like that. Matt, do you happen to know
Oh, really
offhand?
close.
It's really close, yeah.
It's like your sinks were one of the most challenging shapes for it. That might just be the surface material.
Yeah, it's stainless steel, and we've got this mesh in there, and I probably had dishes in there too. So it's definitely not going to do like things like that, or things like plants in a corner generally, don't work well.
But your fridge came out every time.
Yeah, I think the scuffed up stainless stuff is interesting, and this is one of the apps supports what's called a high-res scan, and you can see how very dense this is. And this is about as far as as long as you can scan something like this, because it turns out this ends up being, a million plus triangles really quickly. And it's just kind of overwhelmingly, it's an overwhelming amount of data. I'll rewind that and play it again. There we go.
Do you ever need to do any cleanup of the data afterward, or is it pretty good?
Yeah, there is a processing phase for sure. So you'll see a lot of that stuff happen in real time. And what's interesting is, I think most of the apps are really leveraging what Apple gives you, and that they kind of return these higher level primitives. A lot of the apps seem to do about the same thing. But there are a few like this where you have this really high res mode, and this is crazy high res, and the files end up being actually really huge.
Yeah, all the really good stuff I've seen, people like brought it into ZBrush or the Autodesk's point cloud tool and cleaned it up.
Yeah.
Just because it's nice to have the surface, it's nice to have the textures, but it is kind of noisy. And then
Yeah.
you can just go in and post-process it. You can make it look pretty good. And you can do that faster than modeling it all by hand in some cases. It depends on what you're scanning, obviously. But
Right. And it depends on the purpose, of what you want it for. And I think the point cloud stuff is really leveraging AI and getting into a really cool spot. So that is one really neat thing. So where I kind of got started with this is we do a lot of work at Space in the designing spaces and experiences and environments. This is some work we've done for 3M, and I think I've actually talked about this years ago. This is kind of an old one, like a good example of one of their innovation centers. We help them design exhibits, and we use VR to do that. So we create spaces before we build them to understand what they're going to feel like. And we've been doing a lot more of this, and this is our office. We just went through a remodel, and we use the Oculus Quest and VR to basically, place furniture, move it around, understand where walls should be, how tall ceilings should be, that kind of thing. And it's really amazing. It takes a little bit of work to get in there, but it definitely got me thinking. So I've got this ability to scan, real world environments. What if I did that and then walked through it in VR? And this next video here is kind of the first time I ever did this. I just captured it, and when I hit play, you'll see it. It looks like a video at first, but it actually is that kitchen scan, and then the rest of my house in VR. So I'm in Unreal Engine. And you can see it looks pretty good for the most part. And then you see there's a whole bunch of missing stuff, and I have robot hands. And I'm actually not a robot. But this was and I just kind of want to talk through this process because, while it's early days, it is really incredible to be able to walk around a space, scan it in just minutes, and then do whatever you need to do with that. And for us at Space, a good use case is let's capture environments and then manipulate them and see what we can do with them.
And that, that scan would also clean up really well too. Like a lot of that missing detail you can just fill in.
Right, and this is just totally raw. Yeah.
And you still have a lot of texture information that is there that's not present just because you don't have geometry in some of those places. But you still have all the texture data. Yeah,
it's pretty incredible how these things work and how fast. I'm just kind of blown away by how fast this is. And like you said, Matt, this was just me, if I wanted to evaluate a place, evaluate some real estate for kind of future use, like retail, that sort of thing. This isn't perfect by any stretch, but it also very much volumetrically feels like I'm in a place. So if I'm in here, in this place, it feels like I'm in my house and everything's exactly the right height. It's a place that I know. So you can get into spaces easier now. And what is interesting here is it captures, I just had all the lights on and we have this LED light in our living room, and I have it set to red, so the whole place looks red, but that's what it looks like. But these are basically fully textured, and the lighting that it captures is baked in. So when you bring these into game engines, you basically do them unlit or fully lit, and then they look like they were when they were captured.
So
and I've got some kind of behind the scenes here.
If you're bringing this
into
Unreal, how big is the final mesh in terms of polycount?
Oh, I've got all that stuff. I've got a bunch of slides. This one, I think, was about 150,000 polys. So that with its texture, it's one I ended up, I think, using. I have all the stats here too. Yep. And I think one thing to remember too, kind of like the very upfront thing, is this is early days here. This is literally kind of, it's ARKit 4, but it's basically the first round of LiDAR equipped devices. Matt, you've seen this go from ARKit to LiDAR 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. It's just going to get better and better and better over time. And the AI and all the algorithms and stuff are going to get better too.
So when you're doing LiDAR scanning, not only is it capturing, surface distance, it's capturing textures, and is it also capturing UV mapping?
It does all that for you, yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So again, things that are kind of okay today. So these are some of the details around the software that I used, and it's worth calling out, a technique many of us have heard of is photogrammetry. And this is a process used to take many 2D photos and reconstruct a 3D scene. That's definitely not what this is. And Zach, I know you've done some work in this space, right?
Yeah. The big dividing line, Shane was asking about this during practice. Photogrammetry these days kind of means it's processed offline from a bunch of static images, and this is closer to SLAM, which is a real-time process used for tracking our heads.
Yeah.
So you don't want to tap your Oculus Quest twice. As an example, you get taken out of the app.
Right. If you have that option turned on, which you shouldn't, because that's what happens, right? Yeah.
There's probably a category of SLAM just for this, fusing depth data, but I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. And one thing is, photogrammetry still has a place for sure. One example I think where this is used, will continue to be used, is for aerial maps for things like Google Maps and Apple Maps. When you zoom out and you see that 3D view, that's all done post-process using photogrammetry, right?
Yeah, cameras from planes.
Yeah. And I would talk a little bit about this. Matt, you touched on this earlier, but this is basically in 2017, Apple released ARKit 1.0, and they use this. It's visual inertial odometry. I know, Zach, you gave a whole presentation on this, so you're probably better at explaining it than me. But basically what it's doing is it's using what it sees from the camera and the motion of the phone using the accelerometer and the built-in directional, what's it called, the directional sensor?
Gyroscope.
There you go. And those things together. And Zach, maybe you want to chat about that a little bit, but I think it's interesting how the camera comes in, at 30 or 60 frames a second, and those motion sensors basically record like 1,000 times a second, and those things are stitched together and basically used to figure out what it sees, right?
Yep. Yeah, the only key thing to kind of care about is if you use only the gyroscope and the accelerometers, they drift, and within seconds you're flying through the universe really fast. And if you've ever used even a Quest controller, if you hide it long enough and then bump it, it'll start flying around. But I was going to say a Vive that relies much more heavily on its visual tracking. And then to do the same thing in a phone, you just need high quality calibrated sensors. And then when Google mimicked ARKit by releasing AR Core, it worked on 3 different phones.
Yeah. Yep.
And
that is exactly right.
Down to calibrating the sensors.
Yeah, and Apple, since I think it was the 6S and newer, they've been basically calibrating every sensor in every phone individually to basically be able to do this, which is kind of amazing, like forward thinkingness. And one thing I'll say here is the real difference that LiDAR gives you is where this really drops is, again, you need the phone's motion and direction to be able to do this, and good visual feedback to kind of do that alignment and prevent the drift from happening. And when you're in a low light scenario or you're looking at a surface that has very little detail, the photo part just doesn't work. And that's where these early, non-LiDAR equipped devices really fell down. Like it doesn't work at night and it won't work with, really glossy surfaces. So you'll notice they have it on some specific type of wood that has like the unique grain. This is basically like the best thing ever for this. And that's no accident, right?
And they hired somebody to apply a perfectly diffuse material to the surface to prevent any reflections.
Yeah,
so
right.
Perfect for that for that event.
And hey, it's a keynote. They should do that, right? Yeah. So kind of summing the real benefits of LiDAR is that LiDAR gives you more direct measurements and less inference, and things like the scanning speed, like when you start your phone up, it's just going. Low light, like I mentioned, and challenging surfaces, and then you just get much better detail out of this. I think all of us or many of us have played with the apps that, with just the camera would basically do a 3D scan of objects, and those are always really appealing when you read about them, and then always kind of a letdown when you use them, unless someone's seen ones I haven't. But it's just a different world now with LiDAR for sure. So scanning software. How many people here actually have one of these devices that has the LiDAR sensor? I'm just kind of curious. I know there's a couple. I'm sure you do, Matt, right? All right,
I don't
half of us.
have one yet. That's
okay.
The one thing when I upgrade my iPad, that's probably what I'll be mainly using it.
I figured you'd be first because you're always the guy who shows up at the Minnesota meetings in real life. Look at this new thing you all don't have.
I still have my 2017 iPad Pro that I paid like $1,200 for.
Yep. Throw it in the trash, right? That's so sad. So there are a bunch of these apps, and I'm not going to talk about all of them. I've kind of whittled down a list, but they're definitely all worth trying. They all generally do the same thing. Some are free, some are not. But there's 2 that really stuck with me, and I kind of want to go through them. Next slide here. So this is the first one you should download if you have this. This one's just free, like free as in beer. You can just use it all you want. It's 100% free. Not sure what their business model is. They must do something else, otherwise they're going to go broke. But basically, it's the process we talked about. You can scan, edit, you can measure the real life distance between things because they're all real world. And then the share part. So I'll kind of go through a few key points I called out here. It is completely free. The scanning does work in real time. One of the examples I showed earlier was actually this app. This is the app that has this high resolution mode. And I mentioned earlier that when it's doing LiDAR scanning, it's actually, there are 3 different confidences, high, low, and medium, meaning I have a high degree of confidence that point is right there, a medium or a low confidence, and you can say, just limit this to only high confidence points or let everything through. And on this one, you can actually choose the range anywhere from 5 meters, which is its maximum. And there it is, Zach, it's 0.3, so it's 30 centimeters. That's the minimum there. And then you can choose point density from 5 to 20 millimeters. And if you crank all these things up all the way, you're going to get 10 to 15 seconds max before things crash or it just stops scanning. This does create an incredible amount of data, no doubt.
And that's where Apple's pricing efficient memory quantity is a big drag.
Yep. And I think that's why the iPad Pro, which has more memory, really does do a better job with these. Yeah, for sure. When you do scans, they're also saved, so you have access to all the scans you've done, which is pretty neat. And then this is the part that's just incredible. Oftentimes you'll see something like this, and you'll want to export it, but it's not the format you need. It's hard to imagine needing a different format. So OBJ is just the good old standard, basic geometry and textures and simple materials. USDZ is Apple's AR format. So if you're doing a scan here and you send it to somebody on their phone, they'll just be able to see it instantly with no software needed. It just works. What's cool about this is I can basically scan my kitchen. I can text it to Greg, and then Greg can open it up and he can see my kitchen in real world scale. So that part is just, it's so easy. It's so slick.
I think the only file I don't see on there is the Autodesk format, DXF.
Yeah, the other one does, but this one doesn't. And then GLTF is an open format that's really great. Apps like Blender use it. This is basically the Android version of USDZ. They've kind of adopted that, but it still isn't quite as natively into the OS. GLB is basically a binary version of that. STLs are interesting. These are basically stereolithography files. And if you remember that scan of my house, there's open holes everywhere and all that kind of stuff. You can't really bring that into CAD because it's not a big closed model. So when you export to this, it basically treats every single surface as its own unique item. So it will import into CAD. And we've actually done some work where if you bring this in, then you can use CAD to really quickly create a blueprint, floor plan kind of thing. And that's a really cool use case, I would say.
Mesh Mixer can open the point cloud data, and that does a really good job to clean it up.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
It's free from Autodesk. And it has it'll fill holes, and it has smoothing and polygon reduction and all kinds of stuff. It's meant specifically.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Okay. Yeah, and there's some good open source stuff that's point cloud, that reads all these different formats. They're all a little bit different. The UIs and all the open source stuff is pretty wacky, so I'll have to check out that one. And then this does allow you to basically import or send directly to Sketchfab, which is kind of amazing. And then SketchUp, obviously. I think I've got one more slide here. Oops. Hit that twice. A couple more things here. You can actually, once you've done the scan, it keeps all the original scan information around, and I'll show you what that looks like. So you can go in and basically redo the retopologizing or the simplification or the optimization of it, or you can have it do a better job of refining it. So you have a bunch of options there. So it stores all the input photos and input telemetry and input point clouds, and then redoes that. Like I said, you can smooth the meshes, you can simplify things, and then you can basically transform the objects. So if you say don't start in the middle of your house, you can kind of slide the whole thing over. And you can do crops too. So oftentimes, if you say are scanning a room and you only want a specific room, when you sweep by, you're going to get 15 feet into the next room, and you often want to just cut that off and just reduce the amount of information you're dealing with. And then you can measure between points. And this is just amazing. The scan of my house from one end to the other, just to sanity check it. I picked from my stove to our one of our living room couches was exactly 47 feet, and that scan that I walked through was off by less than an inch. So just incredible. I've done some scans at our office. I've got one of those I can share later, and in there we basically have these white lacquer floors that are super glossy, and those it's not quite as accurate on. But if you have a good texture and good space, it seems to do. I'm just amazed at how accurate that is. So yeah, this is 3D Scanner app, iPad, iPhone. It's amazing.
That has to be more accurate than like the old measuring, with the AR on like the iPad.
Yeah.
Where it's trying, because it would kind of slide around. So this is got to be more locked down.
Yeah, the sliding stuff is gone, and in fact, Apple's built-in apps now do use LiDAR, so they work much better. And then third-party apps are updated if they're updated, so it's kind of hit or miss there. And then the second app I want to talk about, and this is the one I actually prefer, is called Polycam, and it's $20 yearly. I think it's $60. You can buy a lifetime purchase to it, and it does almost all the same things. I just find the UI and kind of experience and output just a little bit better, and I'll kind of show both of these. Again, fast scanning, there are fewer options with capturing. There's no high res mode. You can do an HD process at the end depending on the size of your scan. The export formats, it's almost all the same thing. They do have DXF there, so Autodesk is formatted, is supported. Otherwise, everything's the same. And they also do quick video loops, so they'll just do an orbit around it in video, which I thought was kind of a nice little addition. But I think the killer feature of this is that you can do a scan. So like the scan of my house, I started by just scanning the kitchen, and then I wanted to extend it. And what you can do is you can select a scan and say, I want to scan this further, and you just go to the original spot. It determines automatically, quote, automatically where you are, and then you just keep on scanning. So you can scan really big areas in multiple segments, and that's, for some use cases, just super, super useful. I think it's got the best UI and experience of all these. Someone really thought this through, and it's really slick. And then I have an A/B comparison, but the results here just seem to be better. So I think a lot of people use the other one, but because it's free, but for $20, this app is insane.
Yeah, multiple scans would work well with Mesh Mixer too, because you could bring in the multiple point clouds and you could merge them all together into a single mesh.
Yeah, and it'll figure out how to combine them all together.
Understand the overlaps and everything between the point clouds.
Yeah, it's amazing. Zach?
Do you remember if you had tried an app from Occipital? I don't remember the name of their app for this.
Let's see. I've got a few. That might be one of the ones listed here. You and I used that one. I remember back when we used to hang out in the real world. That was the one we used, right?
Yep.
I don't think I have that one in here. Yeah, that's not one of these here. Have you tried that one lately?
I haven't. They just started so many years earlier. And did so much software work. I thought they should come out of the gate strong, but I haven't heard about it.
And that was the one that was for the structure core.
Yeah.
Sensor.
So they sold essentially a Kinect add-on for iPads.
Yep.
And then software to go with it, like 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have the one called Canvas on that screen? Because that's the one they make.
I don't, but that's one I've tried too. Yeah.
That's theirs. Canvas is occipital.
Oh, is it really? Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Oh,
okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay. And honestly, they all kind of do the same thing. And I think what ARKit does when it's visualizing things, they all appear to be using ARKit in the same way. But then they capture this data and do different things with it, like with the point clouds, like Matt's talking about. There's software on the device that flies through that. That's the part that is, it's incredible how fast our mobile devices have gotten here to do this. So the scanning part, super easy. It took a few tries but to figure out how to kind of do the scanning the best. And some of them have tutorials, some of them don't. But what I found works the best is one of the tutorials is basically think of it as like moving a worm along your wall. So if you're holding your phone like this, you can see my hands now, you kind of go up and down like this, capture the floor, and then move on to the next segment. So you kind of want to go from one end to the other and kind of do an area thoroughly as you're going forward. And then on my house, when I got to the end, it was just like, oh, you're here, and it saved up, and it was amazing, and it was that great. I think what you wouldn't want to do is like walk on a path straight down, then start doing weird random chunks all at once. I think doing big continuous areas seem to work pretty good. But honestly, you can move these things pretty fast, and it really does a pretty good job of doing the scans. I don't know if you had the same luck there, Matt.
Yeah, I've done this a bit with what is it? The Stereo Labs camera.
Oh, sure.
Well, they have their own kind of, it's visual because it's a stereo camera. It doesn't have the LiDAR, but it suffers from the same thing. If you do like a straight path, it kind of gets lost almost, and then depending on what you're scanning to, it will just it'll rescan it, and then you get like a merge of the two passes and not like a clean single pass. So I'm guessing that the LiDAR helps a lot with cleaning up that kind of stuff. It probably would be problematic with, like, if you're scanning a human, they'd have to stand really still, because if they did move, it would pick up and
Ooh, I've got one of those.
Like that. Nice.
Yeah, and that doesn't feel like quite the right resolution. I think this is definitely geared towards, and I'll kind of get into this, but definitely feels like. So this is a scan I did So this is 3D scanner app. So I'm just testing these both out. So I just went through and did the same thing twice here. This is basically the completely raw export from here. So you can see it's the full floor OBJ file format. Again, all the file formats are going to have the same type of thing. And it's about 315,000 polygons. And you can see what this looks like. Generally, you see the structure of the room. And I took some screenshots. This is in, what am I in here? I'm in, just the Windows, like 3D Object Viewer. This is the polygon structure, and this is where you can kind of do a comparison of the other ones. But you can see as it understands the surface better, it will start to make it more uniform and regular and use less polygons. I think the other app, Polycam, is actually a lot better at that. And then these are the vertices here.
So you have to do one uniform continuous scan.
And then, so there are two differences. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, does the software can handle doing pieces and then stitching them together, or you have to move and go in a one-shot scan of the whole room?
Oh, it's a little hard to hear you. Zach, can we boost him? Or you want to repeat it?
Yeah. He's asking about, do you have to scan everything in one shot, or can you do part of it and then come back later and finish your scanning?
Yeah, and the difference between those two apps is the first app, it's just each scan is its own thing, and you can line them up yourself, like bring them into a 3D package. And with Polycam, you can basically take an existing scan, and as long as the environment hasn't changed, just extend that and do it multiple times.
Nice.
Yep. And there is one difference between these two that kind of matters depending on what you're going to do with it. But in with the 3D scanner app, it basically just comes through as one big material and one big texture. And that kind of matters in 3D graphics. This is actually what the texture looks like. So again, I wouldn't expect this to be something that a human would make. It's very algorithmic, but it is interesting. You see some of the key things are just kind of, in their big preserved areas. But you'll notice the texture is a weird size. It's definitely not friendly to real-time computer graphics. It's some random 6522 by 2888. So that's a weird non-standard size. Typically, we would use a square texture size to conserve space and kind of increase performance. But there are ways around that. In fact, when we started doing bigger areas, I ended up having to atlas all the textures and do texture baking, which is not the subject of the talk tonight. But I just wanted to try and see what these looked like. So that's the kind of texture output. So it's basically one big mesh, one big set of UVs, and then this applied to it.
Okay. When you bake out, because it's storing some of the raw data, does it have a representation of the texture data that's like individual frames or some kind of, or is it just this?
Yeah, I don't think I saved one of those, but this app doesn't, but Polycam does. And if you do an export of everything, it literally gives you the point cloud, the IMU data, and then every single photo it took along the way. And so you can just have everything. Yeah.
Huh.
And it's huge. It's a lot. It is really interesting. I could follow up and send you one of those if you want. It's interesting to see for sure.
Because I've worked with photogrammetry data, and in that you have all the raw photography, So when you generate a point cloud, you can just resample it from all the original photo.
Right, and this does that too, and it's a pretty big range of images. Some are blurry, some are not. It's taken them, I think, when it kind of needs to. And if I had to guess, they end up being probably, these bigger images are the ones it's taking, and then it's just continuously grabbing color data too.
Scanning robot that has perfect movement of arm and angle, so that all the shots are perfectly in focus.
I wonder if something like a gimbal would help or not.
I bet it would.
Unclear on that, because I think the as you're moving around, it's able to understand that more. So, yeah, I guess I'm not sure on that, but
It'd be
interesting to try that. It'd be interesting to try that and see.
Yeah, I've got one. I'll have to give that a shot. Zach, I bet you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. The brighter and shorter exposures would help to avoid motion blur on the camera.
Yeah. But again, what's interesting is you don't see that blur in the end result, generally.
Yeah.
So it's a composite though, so it's probably in there. It's just not prominent.
100% over a pixel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and these things are a little bit of black boxes, but the fact they give you all this is kind of amazing. And then Polycam, this is the second app, and I really do recommend this one. It's really slick. This is the end resulting export, and this is the one I used in the VR demo I did. So this is textured export, OBJ format, and we are at 162,000 polygons. So it's about half the density, and the end result looks better. So when I say I really prefer this app, I think the resulting mesh is just a lot better.
Yeah.
And if you can read these, you can see some of the details here in terms of triangles, vertices, that sort of thing. But this is the same thing inside view, and you'll see this takes a different approach. This, I think, puts polygons where they matter, not just in a regular grid like the other one. So you can see it's quite a bit of difference in the processing going on here, and obviously it's about half the number of triangles overall.
Have you tried running that through like some kind of auto retopographic algorithm to see if it would
I haven't
the geometry?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think the point cloud step's interesting. But for me, what I was like, hey, can we start doing this in the Quest? And it worked, so I just didn't kind of go further down there. But yeah, there's a lot. All the information's right there.
ZBrush has a pretty good one, and there's actually a decent one for Maya now and Blender.
Okay.
And it would convert all that back to quads, essentially. And then that would
right,
make it way more manageable.
And 3ds Max has a new AI-powered, basically, retopologizer. That might be really interesting to try, too.
Because then some of the stuff where there's problems you could then fix by hand once you had clean geometry.
Right. And for people that do 3D modeling work, this is where there's a difference between this app, and it's kind of weird. It's not just one big texture and one big material. It's actually 8 different material groups. So each of these colors basically is a material. So if you see this, this blue color and this blue color, that's one texture, one material. And it's not kind of kept locally in a part of the mesh. It's just spread throughout, which is weird. I've never seen anything like it. But this is what the mesh of my house was. So each one of these is a 4K texture. So it's basically, 2 8K textures worth of texture information in here. And they're standard computer graphics, good size, like 4096, decent usage for sure. And this is much better for real-time 3D.
Yeah, it looks neater than that other one.
What's the last one with the smaller texture swatches on it?
Just how its algorithms worked. Little ones. It must do a fitting thing for kind of maximum texture usage for sure. And this is something you could certainly run through and optimize. But what I found with the Quest is, the Quest 1 specifically is where I was doing most of my testing, is the Quest 1 can only display a certain number of polygons, but it has a ton of memory, and the texture loading is super fast. So when we've stress tested that, it's just worked great. And in fact, when we've done more optimized things, I've atlased them to 8K textures, and you can have multiple 8K textures, and it works just fantastic. So what I actually did with this one in my first test is I just used it as is, and I've kind of got the Unreal Engine, but then I'll talk a little bit more about how I was able to take bigger meshes and condense them down for use like this. So I've used Unreal Engine forever. It's just the thing I feel more comfortable with, so I use this, but Unity does all this just fine too. If you use Unreal, you can basically follow, it's basically the wizard of what type of project you want to make. And just a few things to call out is this is a standard blueprint project. And let's see, I'm going to get over here so I can see it. Performance characteristics, this is important. You do not want high fidelity graphics, you want scalable graphics. And you want ray tracing disabled, definitely on the Quest. And mobile tablet is a form factor, which is to say it's not desktop. And this is basically what you do to make an Oculus Quest project, just the kind of default hello world. And then the cool thing is you can choose starter content, so if you want materials in there or not. And then it will just put you in basically a level that you can, move around in VR with those hands and standards. So my first test was, none of the overhead of VR stuff that we're doing. Well, it's just the most basic thing we could do ever. So I just used their standard blueprint model. It's pretty simple, and if you've never done it before, there are great video tutorials. In an hour, you can have this running on your Quest. And this is that point I measured. So this is the Unreal Engine interface here. You can see it's 8 different material groups, 8 different textures there. But this is that point I was talking about. And it's 47 feet. I just measured an exact point. And then in the app in Unreal, I measured it. And it was like basically 47 feet and a half an inch. So it was just like off by a couple centimeters, a little less than a couple centimeters. And in Unreal, what's interesting is the apps all use centimeters as their default size. There's no information in an OBJ that tells you what units you're using. Unreal does it by default, so I just put it in and didn't have to do any scaling. It just was perfect. Oh, Matt, you're gonna.
Nope. I was just saying it
Oh.
worked nice.
Yeah, one of those times where like, is this going to be 10 times too big or 10 times too small? And it actually turned out just right. So for all those times it hasn't worked out, for all those USB cables I plugged in upside down, I got some time saving there. And then this is the overview of the whole mesh. And what I did is I set this to basically unlit, which means full bright. So it's just going to display the texture value that's there because lighting is basically baked in. And you can see this little weird area here. That's a mirror I have. And what it does is with just a pure mirror, it's going to reflect that back and hit the surface behind it. So you end up getting this type of thing here. And then let's see. Yeah, so this is where I'm just going to kind of show these material groups. And if you kind of look at one area, you'll see it as I go through, but I'm basically just selecting the different, basically, material groups on this mesh. And you'll see that it changes. That's material group 1, material group 2. So this is definitely not very optimized. What this means to me is if I'm standing over here looking, this way, let's see if I do that right. If I'm standing over here looking out the window, it's going to basically have to draw the whole house anyway. So there are optimizations you can make if it's important, or if you're using a mesh that's way bigger than what it should be. It would be easy to basically atlas these textures and split this object up into multiples and just call it good.
If you did the retopo, you can reproject the texture back onto the quads too. So then you could have like more square planes of textures.
Right. Yeah, so you could cut that down. And I think for me, we're not trying to fit this stuff into like a bigger project. It was just, can we use this to visualize real spaces? But there's so much further this could be taken for sure. That's the last one there. And then just overall performance. So, what we've seen with the Quest is, a couple 100,000 polygons and materials that are kind of the right type, meaning, they're not crazy in terms of number of instructions, generally diffuse materials, is no problem. And you can use a ton of texture space. So with 0 optimizations, this one came into the Quest 1 and basically performed at max frame rate the whole time. So no issues there. So this can definitely be taken further, and it was just kind of a good proof of concept to see how this would work. Let's see. And here's a project where we turned this. So that was just a prototype, and then this has since turned into kind of real work. And we did a remodel at our office, and this is an example of a more detailed scan. It's a smaller area. It's much larger in terms of ceiling height. The polygon count isn't actually very high. This, I think, actually ended up being about 50. But what I did here is I basically brought this into 3D Studio Max, did some work to basically bake out the textures to one single 8K texture. And the Quest just does that really well. And in fact, in the VR experience we had, I can put 2, 3, 4 of these in, and they render up just fine. So when we can meet in person again, we have a really cool office space to meet. So hopefully that'll happen sometime at this point. Got a couple more things, but a quick summary here for me is, again, LiDAR scanning is really in early days, but the tools they're really impressive given how early on we are. You think back to like the first iPhone and how low res those photos were, but it's like, hey, I have a camera on me at all times. It's incredible what can happen. And look what's happened, right? The distances are really accurate. Where I've seen this work really well is if there's any kind of texture on the floor in area you're walking, it's going to be off by, the tiniest fraction of a percent. In our space office, I'll go back one more. Our floors vary quite a bit there, but everything is super gloss white. And it does struggle a bit with that. And I noticed that from the right side to the left side, the floor is off by about 4 inches, and it's actually off by about 1.5 inches or so. So again, certain types of surfaces can still be slightly problematic when they get more reflective. Let's see. Simple export and sharing capabilities make all it easy. A lot of times you have these proof of concept-y types of things that work great, but you can't get them into anything. This, it's hard to imagine how it would be easier and better for sharing. And, I think mobile AR is this thing that people are figuring out right now, and it's a step towards kind of our bigger AR future. But already with LiDAR, the minute you turn on your LiDAR sensor and start scanning, the environment is known. We know what to do. It's just incredible. And I think the key thing is, like, we're just getting started here. This is really, really like version 1.0. And this is where, just thinking about the bigger picture a bit, kind of like I said, like, we're getting to this headset AR future that we all know is coming. It's a matter of when. But the mobile stuff we're doing today is really helping us figure out use cases and getting the software. And like Apple's putting these ingredients together in a way, they're doing it with the bigger picture in mind for sure. And I think the end game is, I really like this. This is a frame from Hulu's The First, which is about the first human mission to Mars. And in that series, they put on glasses, and they just like totally normal glasses, except for this little ring, and they can do AR and VR in them. And they just show it as being kind of this ambient computing thing. And I know we'll get there, but it's going to be a while for sure. And kind of summing this up, like Apple's done a lot of the things that are needed to do augmented reality, except the glasses themselves, and we know they're working on them. There's a lot of rumors there. But, where am I in the world? What direction am I looking at? A deep understanding of what I'm seeing. We're doing some stuff with the computer vision and the LiDAR and human pose stuff on the iPads. It's just incredible. The rendering a realistic layer, obviously, like the new Apple M1 chips, and our phones are incredibly fast and can do a really amazing job of rendering. And then this is the part, like interacting naturally via face, voice, and gestures. They're really working on that. Again, I think Siri's probably the real weak point there in terms of what they need to do. But if you don't have a phone and you only have a headset, you're going to have to interact via voice and other gestures, right? So it's going to be different than just a keyboard. And I'm kind of increasingly of the opinion that very few companies are going to have the ability to pull this off. We're doing active development with Microsoft HoloLens, and they're a thing, but they're not going to make the first version out there that people, normal consumers would use. Apple and Facebook really feel like the two that are competing in this. I just saw an interesting news, I think it was just yesterday, with Google and Magic Leap, so maybe there's a third in there, but I think it's going to take incredible scale, incredible software, incredible hardware to kind of get to this point, and LiDAR is definitely a step along the way. Just like we started with Macs and PCs, move to mobile, the AR glasses future is definitely coming next. It's definitely a few years away.
Google will get there first, but then cancel it.
Yeah, or they'll come out with something that's no, like laughing aside, I think it's either Facebook or Apple, and if I had to guess, Facebook's been more open about showing it. But I can't think of anyone else that would be a credible threat. We're also using things like the Nreal light glasses, and it's cool how small they are, but it's terrible, right? Yeah. Oh, what was that? Okay.
That's a bad joke.
I had a couple other things to show that I just thought were neat. Because exporting is so easy, if you go to Sketchfab and type LiDAR, you will find incredible things from all over the world that have been scanned in, and people have done a lot of what Matt's talking about, like cleaning things up. There's one it's a restroom in a park outside in Brooklyn, and it is just incredible to see these things and the graffiti on the wall, and like you really feel like you're there. This is insane. And like even things like, what do rooms look like? What do people's offices look like? What did you have for lunch? Again, it's the new like Instagram food selfie thing. This is incredible. Like go there and check it out, and you can view them in the browser, and it's amazing. And then I think someone had mentioned, what's that?
I said there's a few people that do amazing cleanup. Like they spend.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people, but and I like to say I'm a photographer because my wife's always taking photos, and then I take terrible photos of her. But we went up to the Gunflint Trail and hiked Magnetic Rock Trail, and this is the Magnetic Rock. So I just had her hold still as she was taking a photo, and then just kind of captured part of the area around her. So just interesting kind of memory of that, and you can see how this works. And just standing here and scanning around, it kind of goes about 15 feet off there. And with this one, I struggled to kind of get up higher, but then I thought as we were walking back on the trail, it was just like an amazing day, and I captured I think it was about 125 feet of this trail. So this is just snow. Like there wasn't a lot of texture stuff around at all. Just got a little bit on trees, but basically it's this trail, and I can just zoom in and kind of remember it. And there's this little river that you walk over, but it captured all that just fine. And I definitely looked like a crazy person out there, but I'm okay with that. So I think it'll be interesting. Again, where does this go in the future? And Matt, you mentioned something about meshes being able to combine together. Picture going somewhere and adding a scan to something exists and having that whole, thing just constantly expanding. Like all those things are going to happen. I think the creative outlets here are just going to be insane. And speaking of that, one thing I'll say is we do a lot of work in the Instagram and Snapchat kind of AR world for sure. And Lens Studio by Snap, they are doing some incredible stuff in the AR world, and they now support lenses that are driven by LiDAR. So one example of the lenses they do is you can say, if this is a floor surface, treat it in a specific way. If it's a wall, do it in a different way. And they have some really interesting full body scan stuff too that we've just been working with. But they're already leveraging this, and they're really leaning into this in their core business and in commerce and things.
Yeah, their segmentation system is pretty awesome.
It's
I wish
amazing.
I wish they would support desktop platforms. I think you could do even crazier stuff than you can do with just the phone.
Yeah, you can use the filters in your camera, but that's about it. But yeah, their system is amazing. And then this is my cat Ginger, and there's an app that basically captures over time, and I'll restart this once it's done, but it basically captures a frame of LiDAR or a sequence of LiDAR frames as fast as it can, and ultimately you can see what the camera's seeing in real time. And this is just an app too, so you can see her walking there and wondering why I keep calling on her to kind of walk there, but you can see the shadow that she blocks the sensors. So it's an interesting way to kind of see what our devices are seeing like this. I'll rewind that and play it one more time. But when you look straight at her, that's when it's kind of, that's kind of what it sees. And then I just kind of spun this around to see what happens. And these you can actually export as animated GLB files and do interesting things with them too. But yeah, the creative potential and stuff like this, I just think is incredible.
It's really reminiscent of Minority Report. There.
Yeah, right.
3D photos.
Except it's real, and we can just do it with our phones, right? That's the part that's just kind of incredible to me. And that's kind of the end. But basically, it's just I thought of a quick experiment. We've been doing a bunch of this stuff, and just wanted to share like some of what I've learned. But there's so many more directions we could take this. But man, it's just incredible. I can't believe we can do this. So.
Well, and with that outdoor scanning that you showed, it got me to thinking that are they using drones to scan LiDAR, areas? Yeah.
In fact, they're using planes, and a lot of, I have a friend who does this for a living, but a lot of the scanning of forests and like our military specifically does a lot of this where they use LiDAR from planes, because regular radar can't see the difference between like the tops of tree canopies and where the ground actually is and different types of ground. So yeah, there is, and they're finding ancient ruins and things like that by using LiDAR because they can see in a different way that we can't. Definitely.
That's not LiDAR, that's millimeter radar.
Oh, could you speak up a little bit? You're really quiet, or could we turn him up?
That's not LiDAR, that's millimeter radar.
Millimeter radar?
You're saying it's millimeter radar?
Oh, gotcha. Millimeter wave, yeah.
Radar. That's not LiDAR, because LiDAR is basically visible infrared light. It wouldn't go through any kind of solid matter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. Yep. I could be wrong on that for sure.
Extremely penetrating and very, very precise.
Gotcha. Yes, you're right on that. Yep.
You just need to make like a neutron scanner. Just bomb everything with something that can go straight through matter. And there's no shadow.
One last scan of the last part of the Earth, right? Yeah, that sounds good.
Marc, you also had a good story about walking outside, scanning your truck in a minute or two, and then sending that to Paul to previs as an art asset. Is there
we actually just
sun or reflections or something that causes problems for some of those different objects?
That worked really well. Yeah, we just did a interesting project where we had to build 39 vehicles, and we didn't have CAD or 3D for some of them, so we had to rely on. We thought, hey, let's try scans, and it actually worked. So what we did is we used the first app, 3D Scanner Pro, did outside scans of vehicles, and that did work really well. The only part that was slightly problematic is very large glossy parts of vehicles, but it as long as you scanned it from a few different directions, it got that. And then we used the high-res scan. You get things like consoles and steering wheels and dashes and things like that, and that was enough. And we basically overlaid them all on top of each other. So yeah, it's actually doing real work today. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Any other questions for Marc before we switch gears? Yep. Click your little emoji button on the lower left. Otherwise, it's
cool. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, it's just amazing to put it all together and try it all. Oh, that is awesome. That is pretty cool right there. Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty dead crowd when you're up on the stage. I always forget to tell people. Cool.
Good
So we're
stuff.
going to switch
All right,
gears.
you next,
I'm going
Zach?
to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to talk real briefly about the upcoming Global Game Jam, and it's more of a chance to ask questions than anything else. I just have to load my slide deck.
Cross your fingers.
This is a good chance for everyone to check their battery status on their Quest.
Oh yeah.
21% on extended battery, 98 on headset.
All right.
44.
Plugged in 100. There we go.
I'm going to check mine. Yeah, I've only dropped to 73%, and I'm using a modern PC USB port. Has anybody figured out how long you can do a Quest link like, for development?
Oh.
Somebody have
Longer
the number?
than you need to?
Seems like it.
Longer than you should?
That's going to be part of my experiment this weekend.
Mark, did you see the Kickstarter for the Looking Glass portrait?
No. I've seen the original Looking Glass at CES last year. What is the portrait?
So their latest deal is like it was actually I think it was down to 200 on like the first 2 days, and then it was like 250 for the rest of the time. So it's like basically like a portrait photo sized display for your desktop, and it's holographic display.
Okay.
Their air quotes around holographic.
Yeah.
But I mean, for that cheap, I thought like, I'm gonna get one, and they are basically advertising that there'll be an app for the phone that you can just take a 3D photo.
Oh,
like
that's what you need. That's cool.
Yep.
When will you receive that, Marty?
When it fulfills.
What's their estimate?
Okay, they actually just updated January 26th. Is that today? No, yesterday.
Yeah.
Saying that they're delayed about 4 to 6 weeks, but I don't know what that means in terms of when does it. Okay, so they were actually shipping estimates on your reward tier. So let me see what my tier was.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They have like a large one that's like a 30+ inch. That's like 15 grand or something.
Yep. So I'm supposed to get it in March sometime, which means it'll be April or May.
Yeah, I got to look at that one at CES. You could basically stand in front of it and they would do a photo. And I remember thinking, this is neat, but for what? Like, there's really narrow use cases where you'd use that. But it's neat for sure.
Disguise how thick it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. My thought was like storefront kind of scenario for sure.
All right, so everybody seeing this slide?
Yep.
So despite what you're seeing, we are not using Google Slides. This is Zach hitting F11 in his browser, doing a screen capture, uploading to his personal website, and then putting that into a JSON list, which is uploaded to Altspace. I just didn't wait long enough on my first screen capture here, so I got a toolbar. So this is going to be real brief. I think I just have 8 slides, but the Global Game Jam is coming up very, very soon on Friday. And just got some tips here for if you're going to be a part of that or if you're doing your first VR project, essentially. And even if you're not doing it Friday, it might still be useful for something. So just talking about what it is and how it's different this year. It is the largest game jam in the world every single year, although likely this year not so much. But it has been growing every year. And the typical scenario, I'll start with that. So it's fun because it's 48 hours around the world. I think the first site goes live in like Fiji, and the last one's Hawaii. And so everybody starts in their local time zone at 5 p.m. or so. And there's kind of a secret theme that's been historically guarded and then revealed to your crew at your local site when it's their turn. This year they, of course, couldn't do that, and they didn't try to do that. And in fact, they added a couple of days onto the front for people that wanted to start early. So the asterisk to everything on the screen, other than the fact that it started in 2009 And we started here in 2012 and have done it every year. Combination of IGDA hosting or glitch hosting. It's been a lot of fun. But every other point is an asterisk because of COVID and online stuff this year. So this year is completely online, and it's already started if you want it to have started. But we're going to start on Friday. And the theme's not secret. And one of the neat things about the jam is they really strongly encourage you to upload your project at the end, all the source code, all the assets. And when you can get hold of a neat project and take it apart and look at it, it's really educational. But the fact of the matter is, when there's 10,000 games, only a fraction of those have that done. And I bring that up because this year I'm actually considering planning to not work in a traditional game engine and not have any source code to publish. But there are some kind of different avenues around that education angle that I'll get to later. Let's go to the next slide. And here's our local IGDA TC site. You just need a place to hang your hat and put your game project and describe it. And this is the one you want to use. And I think we've got people from Wisconsin, Marty, or where did that crew come from? It was a different IGDA.
Is a great question that I don't
Somewhere.
know the answer to.
Wisconsin,
offhand.
Iowa.
Yeah, I think it's Iowa.
One of those places.
It's Iowa.
Yeah, I think so. But this is kind of the highlights of the schedule. You can Google this and see the high-res version that you probably can't make out from the back row. But Friday kickoff's at 5, and we'll kind of respect the traditional way of doing it. We'll watch the opening video together and so on. Tomorrow night, Thursday, there's kind of an optional event if you want to meet some people and form a team ahead of time, or just talk about it. You can obviously do that at the jam. Here, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can form teams at the event. You can bring your own team. You can work totally by yourself. You can make something that's not a game. Really, the heart and soul of the event is just all these people doing the same thing for 48 hours, give or take, for sleeping and eating, and not focusing on other things for that weekend. Typically, it's a lot of fun to actually be in person and see all these crazy, smelly people. But I think we'll have a lot of that anyway, because it's just the things that we like to do online, but instead of an hour a day, it's an entire weekend straight through. Some great examples of things that started in the game jam, and you may have actually heard of because they went on to be commercial projects. Surgeon Simulator started as a game jam game. That was a team that already knew how to work well together, so they were very efficient and got a lot done in 48 hours. Keep Talking, what's the full name of that one? Keep Talking So Nobody Explodes. And Nobody Explodes. That started as a game jam. Game is still there. You can still download it. You can still print out the manual. You can still play it. It got a lot of nice enhancements, though, for the commercial release. I think the original was Gear VR. Sapro Biont is a wonderful print and play board game. So that was the first year we did this in 2012. It's just this really, really wonderful board game for 4 players, and it's just published as a PDF file. And then you get your own little set of tokens, Lego bricks or poker chips or what have you, and you can just play it. And we would play it after meetings at the bar. It's really good. And actually, there is someone ported that into what's the Steam VR thing that has all the pirated board games in it? Tabletop.
Oh, board game simulator, tabletop.
Yeah, something like that. Tabletop simulator, board game simulator. There is a Sapro Biont in there if you want to try to play it during COVID. So like I said, the atmosphere is the thing. People just devoting their chunk of time to this and all being in the same spot. And these are just kind of the key learnings after doing this for, I guess, 8 years. I never do this towards the end, but remember to, quote unquote, walk around and just check out stuff, talk to people, talk to strangers, find out what they're doing, because it's all going to be pretty great. And then record your progress as you go. Just grab some screenshots, record some shenanigans, and we are going to do a kind of a post-mortem thing. We'll kind of see who shows up and what projects happen, but when it's a bigger event, we usually do one for IGDA and then kind of a more detailed VR and AR and HCI kind of thing. This year maybe it'll be combined. We haven't really talked about it. We got to see who shows up and what they make. But expect to hear about that for February. And who knows, maybe in VR there could be like a play event if we get real ambitious. We'll see how that goes. But whether we're online or in person, there's always going to be somebody around to bounce feedback off of or complain about what Unity did to your beautiful project, or ask to even test something out. I've got a little more detail about this later, but there are ways to remotely test somebody else's game. And if this is your first game, totally no problem. Start with a tutorial and just do that for 2 days. And when you get stuck, ask somebody. When you want to tweak something for gameplay, you got somebody that can maybe test it out for you. And kind of in general, show up, meet people, get busy, stay busy. Don't watch YouTube. Don't watch Netflix. And have fun. And then more detailed thoughts, if anybody wants to chime in. We got a lot of vets in the audience. But kind of the secret to success is tiny design, tiny scope. Get it playable really fast. Not don't write the story, don't write the lore, don't make all the 3D models the first day. Get something you can play and then start iterating on it. And that's where you get the bang for your buck, is you'll end up with something that is playable at the end because you started with something that's playable. Don't do networking. Just don't. It's not worth it. But if you're going to use Normcore, it's got nice out-of-the-box stuff. It'll probably work pretty well. I would never... You think so? For just out-of-the-box first networking project?
Yeah, there's a starting point that's built in that's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, so Matt was saying Photon, if you didn't hear him.
And it's free.
That's the... Yep. And Normcore's got a free tier as well. I've heard about Normcore mostly from VR people, so I don't know if it's a little more suited to that with voice chat and things than Photon.
It definitely is more suited to VR.
Yeah. One of the big hits every year is local multiplayer games. Not going to be a big hit this year because no local multiplayer play events. But from a design standpoint, you just get two people fighting on a shared screen, and all of a sudden you don't need AI, you don't need challenge. They'll figure out the controls and how they can mess with each other. And you can do that. Yeah, and you can do that over the internet. Parsec is actually used every month. Marc LaCroix hosts a playtest event through the IGDA TC organization, and he uses Parsec. And so Parsec is just low latency remote input for gamepads, keyboards, that kind of stuff. So if you want to do a local game but not sure how that could happen in this environment, that's the way it could. And he's going to be at the jam, and he said he's happy to answer questions. And like I said, he uses it every month in kind of battle tested environments. And then some ideas for VR. You don't have to have only, this is again, it's getting around the networking thing. If you got somebody on the 2D screen and someone in the headset, no networking needed. And there's some good examples of that out there that are pretty fun. The PSVR.
That's something.
Yeah, you did one.
Would shine because Photon has a JavaScript SDK and it has C# SDK and Unity SDK and whatnot. So I've built Proton apps where people could just go onto a website and then they could click buttons and it would spawn objects for the VR players or the 3D players. So it's like you could make all they have to do is be able to access the internet and they'll just still participate.
Yeah.
Part of the content.
Yeah, that's a great example. I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of just running on a single PC like you guys did for the great 2D and VR game. I forgot what it was called.
Remember that?
Dark mazes and face lasers.
Of course. How could I forget?
Well,
But
theirs was a giant eyeball that had a face laser. Everyone else was in the dark.
and I was just in love with that concept. So it looks like this pixel art 2D game, not even 2.5D, just straight old 80s 2D. But then you put it on the VR headset, and all of a sudden you're looking at voxel models of those same sprites. And those are players with gamepads, and you're in the VR headset shooting face lasers at them.
We cheated. We just had in Unity, the 2D people were at a 90-degree angle, and the camera was filtered so it would only draw the sprites. and
Mm.
the objects were set exactly on top of the sprite. And then the person in VR was looking at the board from an oblique angle in 3D. And so when the players were moving around the board, then with the camera on the VR side was filtered to show the 3D versions of all the assets. So that's how we got the mix. So we only had to just make the 2D work in X and Y, and then all the other stuff worked in 3D just because of the filter of the different content. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, and that was super effective. Thong knocked off the concept the next year. He did you're a giant kaiju in VR, and little spaceships are fighting against you, and those people are game pads on the TV screen. No networking needed for any of that. Yeah, and normal stuff. Trade phone numbers with your teammates. Real life happens, and get a rough schedule going. Sleep and hygiene. So sleep still matters. Hygiene's a lot easier when you're in your own house for most people. But don't forget to do an alcohol wipe on your VR headset every day. And speaking of that, in case people didn't notice, so the waterproof covers for Quest 2 would constantly come into stock and then get sold out in a matter of minutes from VR Cover, which is kind of the premier brand. But all the Chinese knockoffs showed up on Amazon in late December. So you can just get a random waterproof cover, and I'm using one right now. And it's fine. It's cheaper, and it shipped fast, and I didn't have to play games waiting for it to come into stock.
Hey, Zach, VR covers were in stock this week. I just ordered one. I just happened to look, and they were in stock. So.
Oh, cool.
From their site. So.
We'll have to compare someday.
Yep, for sure.
So productivity things for all types of games. You want to get the software installed ahead of time. You want to test it ahead of time. Just don't assume that's going to go easy. I lost 2 hours last year just installing Oculus desktop software on a new laptop because the installer hit a snag the first time and then didn't delete its temporary files. And it didn't tell me why it was breaking every time. You won't have the same kind of internet crunch that you do at a physical game site, but you still want to get everybody to agree on a version. If you don't have a strong opinion or history using Unity, you just pick the last LTS version. LTS is long-term support, and the newest version of Unity that isn't called a beta is always very much like a beta. Not a great choice. And people like Oculus, people like Microsoft, all these third parties flocked to this LTS thing when it started because it decreases the bugs with each release. It doesn't increase them. So almost without
bugs maintain the status quo.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not saying that it doesn't have bugs. I'm just saying it's got less bugs. Charge your batteries. Get a battery pack for your Quest if you don't have one. Verify your USB cords. You never know how those have gotten mangled. And a big one. Everybody gets to Sunday morning with Sunday afternoon end time and says, should we add music or sound? And they're like, yeah, we should. And then they go find, the 2 to 5% of the people that can do music and sound, and it turns out they're kind of busy on Sunday morning. So talk to them on Friday. Talk to them right off the bat. Get a scratch track from them. They can get your creative ideas going. The music can be done quickly, but it can inspire your art, inspire some game design things. And again, they like to iterate too. They don't like just throwing it over the wall and then never coming back to it. The actual so there's going to be an IGDA Discord where you can do all your team stuff and your voice chatting and different kinds of video shares and that thing. There's a global game jam Discord as well, and that you can get that once you've created your account on globalgamejam.org. But they're going to have a channel dedicated to helping people with VR and AR projects. And they had a list of like 20 experienced people that were going to be in there. So that's neat. And this is a picture of the button from the dashboard you get on your Global Game Jam account. Other random VR things, Unity 2019, so that LTS version I mentioned, can still use the old Steam VR plugin. If you move to Unity 2020, you have to use the OpenXR. I wouldn't even call it a plugin anymore. It's quite complicated, relatively speaking. And more to the point, I asked every person I know that has worked with Steam VR and said, "Hey, did you start a new Steam VR project in the last year?" And they said, "No, we work on Quest." But the ones that were still working on Steam VR said, "Well, we just rolled forward the old plugin because it works fine." Whereas the general, feelings on Twitter where people go to complain, obviously, but 2020 and the new OpenXR is a lot of work. And just when you get it working, then you have to deal with bindings for hands. And actually, Ian, you did, I guess that was more than a year ago, but did you use OpenXR or did you use the Steam VR plugin? But you did.
Steam VR.
Yeah.
That was the old one, so yeah. And then
It's got a lot more auto magic that you don't need as much setup. So if you haven't done it before, I feel mostly confident saying it's a good choice. For Unreal tips, ask Marc right now because he's the only one that knows Unreal.
I'm the weirdo.
I'm sure there'll be other people there using it, especially if they're 3D artists, but it's definitely a minority in our local scene anyway. I would think on the Global Game Jam Discord, the global one, the global Game Jam Discord, there will be plenty of Unreal people there.
We just recently created a Unreal channel in the MSP Game Dev Slack, and there were a surprising number of people that kind of came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh yeah, I do Unreal." I mean, not like that many, but more than 2.
Good. 3. So there's 3.
I'm in there.
There might have been 5.
Converting.
That's right. Matt's converting to Unreal.
Matt, we'll have to talk. Interesting. Yeah.
And tracking development. Speaking of the Quest 2, basically, fiddly, not fun, especially the physics. Don't do it. That's like the networking. You might want to do it. Don't do it. If you're going to do it, make it visual only. Make it for, gestures and interactions or something. But if you are going to do it, don't try to do it while the Quest is on your face. Stick it on something. This is my downstairs. It's a boom microphone stand and a microphone clamp, and then a rubber band as a safety in case it gets bumped off of there. That's all. It's $20. It's too late. You'd have to overnight it from Amazon, but you can think of something else.
Do you have it set not to go to sleep?
Yes, I forgot to write that down. Put a piece of tape inside, covering the sensor between your eyes. Yep.
That was the problem we had with mixed reality setup. Was that we had it all working and everything was great. We're in the studio and green screen, and originally we started with a human wearing it, being standing there while we're calibrating, and we got the great idea to bring in a light stand and mount it permanently. And as soon as it was stationary and didn't move at all, it went to sleep.
Yep.
So it was working perfect the entire time. And as soon as we created the thing that made the calibration better, it just put itself to sleep. And then you would walk. By the time you would get to the computer to try and check the tracking, it would be off. And it was Steam rolled out an update or something within the last 2 days of us doing the testing that added the feature where it started to sleep basically for whatever reason to save screen
based on motion. Yeah, they like to do surprise releases as well as this place we're standing inside of. So I think a strong consideration, because we're off online only, I convinced Shane of this, so we're going to give it a shot, is to work without a traditional game engine, work in one of these networked environments. So that's skipping all the way down to the middle there. So mixing in working in a mix of VR and 2D on PC so you don't go blind. One of my experiments is how long can I stay in the Quest 2 this weekend?
What is your record on that? I'm just curious.
I guess it would be one of these meetings, but not on the Quest 2 because I never had the IPD adjustment dialed in until this winter here. On Quest 1, maybe 6 hours, but it had a good IPD. The big difference being the screens were not good enough to do text on Quest 1. So I wouldn't attempt a game jam on Quest 1. But for this kind of thing, probably 6 hours. And I got the 3D printed cram this into your Quest 2 to force the lenses farther apart mod. Nice. And I'm wearing it right now.
I'm going to need that. Okay, I didn't know about such things. That's great.
Yeah, after this weekend, I'll let you know if it fits the bill. But Oculus says...
I'm currently doing the... If you move the lenses very slowly, you can get in between. So I'm running at 2.5, in terms
Yep.
of setting.
But if you don't know game engines, but you do know web stuff, WebXR is out there and it's working better than ever, even on Quest, Quest 1 and Quest 2. They just keep optimizing the browser and taking the bugs out. There's still bugs, but it's working great. If you're a 3D artist, good with 3ds Max like Marc was showing, or anything else, Blender, consider just building an environment and passing it through the Unity pipeline into VR Chat or Altspace. If you're into characters, build an avatar for VR Chat. If you want to do environments, you could do either one, but Altspace, I think, gets a little more foot traffic for environments. Do we have any VR Chat aficionados or experts? Yeah, I think it's sort of a different crowd, more of a non-programmer-y developer crowd. But it's plenty of users.
It seems more the people who like to perform in front of people.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. So.
It's very much about the avatars, yeah. Yeah, so you do want to target something that you can do on 2D and VR. Got an echo. Ventrologist, mute yourself. Or be muted by me. Too slow. All right.
There you go.
You do want to be able to move back and forth, and not just for going blind reasons, but for example, in Rec Room, it's wonderful to position things in VR and paint and create objects, and it's kind of hellish to do text and 2D things. So you can actually have a laptop in the same room with a second account and just switch back and forth as you need to. Facebook Horizon is really pretty great, but it's been in beta for a year now, and good luck showing it to your friends. But the tools are really wonderful. I don't know what the problem is releasing that.
Except the programming tools.
Well, yeah, that you are going to take an interactive hit on any of these. Yep, that's true. Yeah, and Rec Room, as of Christmas, they released an Xbox client, so it's not just VR, and it's not mainly VR anymore. It's screaming children on phones and Xboxes and PS4s, but there is a complete private path through the entire world. You can never see a public space, and that's the way I've been using it for months. And we did that for our social in November, completely private.
And we just had screaming adults.
That's true.
Exactly.
Throwing bowling balls at video games.
We all knew each other, and it was fine. But
yeah. Once there's physics, people get a little rowdy. Don't let the not uploading source files to Global Game Jam stop you from doing any kind of project, because, like I said, not that many people do it. It's nice if you can. And one of the interesting things, Rec Room's the only one I know at all, basically, but you can give people the ability to clone your space and modify it. So that's a little bit like giving up your source project.
Technically, you can do that in Horizon.
Yeah, I suppose after you publish, yep. Yeah.
Assuming they have access to the beta, they can clone it, and you can give them access.
So
Which
that's all I
one are you
had.
going to be in, Zach? We're
going to do Rec Room.
Horizon? Rec Room, okay.
Yeah, I didn't check recently, but the last time I checked Rec Room, so I've got a personal, strong, visceral anger that's triggered by typing in VR. Just even here, typing the 2 words to load my slide deck made me angry.
I understand. Yep.
And for whatever reason, Facebook Horizon doesn't support keyboards on their PC client. It's kind of crazy. But then beyond that, if I wanted to show it to somebody, I probably couldn't. But if you're just going to be hanging out with VR nerds and you're all in the beta, like, the tools are really nice. They did a great job. It's the best. It's orthogonal. It's amazing. The lighting is very flexible. Nobody else has done that, especially not on a mobile headset.
The only thing is, again, on the programming side, because it's visual programming, and some of the things you probably like to drag a peg and then connect it to an object. If you're building something that's like the size of an arena, you have to run this peg all the way to the other side of a room to connect it to the thing on the other side, or you have to scale down the room really small and connect the wire, essentially. And that gets a little tedious.
Yeah, and that's worth emphasizing again. You will take a hit on interactivity. You will take a hit on what you're able to accomplish, for sure. Absolutely, no question. You're almost working around the tool set they give you, but you'll be doing it in a networked environment in a 3D space, and it might preserve some of those social cues that make the jam fun. That was our other thing, is like, well, we have to do something networked. And like, I'm not doing anything networked. That's like a real job. And so we started talking about this. And I don't know if I actually answered Mark, but we're going to use Rec Room as our starting point.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah. Was that Matt?
I will say that on the Horizon side, if you're just curious about what's going on in that space and wanted to just do that as your game jam thing, it would be fun.
Yeah.
Because like Zach was saying, the content creation tools are pretty neat. Like they do like shadow generation, and the lighting is nice, and like the modeling tools for what you have in there are nice.
Tutorials are great.
There's a whole nice set of tutorials to like lead you into the various processes. Like to animate something, you can just like click record and pick it up and move it around, and then hit unrecord, and then you have this object that's animated by just what you happen to do with it. So there's a lot.
The same with audio. You just make dinosaur noises.
Yeah. There's a lot of possibilities that could be really fun if you didn't want to like get your hands dirty with like normal development kind of stuff, and just
that's awesome.
Yep.
So it'd be worth doing, even though you can only share it with like Zach and I.
And Shane.
And RJ.
Yeah, and RJ. So if you do make something, click some snapshots, grab little snippets of video, and there will be a postmortem either with IGDA as one event or two kind of more specified events if we have enough projects, but we'll cross that bridge right after the game jam. Any questions or any random other thoughts from previous years? No? Cool. All right. Well, that is a wrap. Thank you, Marty. Thank you. The effort that went into mine is almost as much as Mark's. You can tell.
This is great.
Cool. Yeah.
94.
Quick question for you. The WebXR stuff you mentioned that is getting kind of better fast.
Yeah.
What have you seen? Have you seen anything specific you want to call out? I know the Mozilla hubs just got completely redesigned, but are there any WebXR stuff you've seen? I know there was a Beat Saber kind of knockoff that ran a WebXR. Do you remember that? That was really good. Anything else like that would just be worth trying out?
I guess I don't know enough about it or what the good libraries or toolkits are, or really anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a few experiments that you can access just through the browser on the Quest. They actually link to a few things.
So I was shocked. I got logged in one day and I had this weird Space Invaders game front and center on my Oculus Quest. I'm like, they would never allow that in the store, and so I clicked it, and it was a URL to a web project. Like, they are featuring web stuff in the Oculus headsets. I don't know why, because they're kind of draconian. Yeah, so there is a lot out there, and that's the neat thing, is you can just pop in the URL and test it and see, would this work on a Quest? Oh yeah, it works okay. Or would it not?
Yeah, if you want to see a good example, I think the best thing I've seen, it's moonrider.xyz is the URL. And you can just, when you're done with this, go to the browser, and then it's great. It's really well done. Performs really well.
And is that a Beat Saber clone?
Yep. I can never remember the name, but yeah, moonrider.xyz.
Cool.
I've had and good luck with stuff published through WebAssembly. Like, they run pretty well. Like, they load fast, and the performance is pretty close to native.
Nice.
Especially on the rendering side. The main drawback is just that JavaScript is slow. So if you're using lots of complicated JavaScript, then that's going to eat into your performance. But things that are just purely rendering run really, really well, because it's fairly close to native performance on the GPU side. So.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, so that's a wrap for this event. There's no problem at all. Just like to give grief. Saw we picked on Marty at the beginning, and all he did was try to plug something. So if anyone wants to hang around, yeah. Good.
Well, like when you're doing your development, you need testers. What are you going to do for that? Are you just going to invite people into your rec room, or?
Yeah. So the thing that Rec Room added that I don't know why everybody doesn't add. They just came out with this numeric code system. So if you came to our holiday event, I published a 6-digit number a little bit before the event in public places, just knowing that griefers weren't going to find it that fast. And you go into Rec Room from anywhere, and you can enter this code, and it takes you to a private. They call it a clubhouse or a club or something. You put this other code in. That's a friend code. That's a quicker way of making friends and accepting friends. There was a third one. I forget what it's for. It's for events. So for a specific time and place event like this thing, just a 6-digit code. So there's none of these shenanigans we do every month where be sure to use your email address and we'll import it so you're allowed into our event. And then if you want to go to the event, go to events and then go to my events, and there it is. On Rec Room, you type in 6 digits, you hit the button, and you go there. None of the business. So for testers, we'll just do that. We'll just like, hey, hop in Rec Room, type in this code. You'll come to our spot. And it lets you clone spaces too. We'll have to work that out workflow-wise, but you can take this room, clone off a copy for testing, and continue to work in the first version of it. There's a lot of that kind of stuff already built in, but there'll be pitfalls for sure.
Yep.
So
awesome.
Yeah. So what we typically do here now at this point in the evening is just go to some random spot that's not so unimaginative as an auditorium and just chat. So if people are interested in that, I'll open up a portal and we'll head out in a couple minutes. Let me see what I have on the list here.
I'm going to shut down the Twitch stream, so thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks for running it.
Yeah. You going to hang out after you do that?
Yeah, I'll hang out for a bit.
A little bit. Yeah, because here we are in VR, we can be doing anything in any place, and we're in an auditorium looking at a rectangle. So if you want to build us a new auditorium and performance test it on Quest, we will use it. If that's your Game Jam project, that would be amazing. We would love you forever.
Cool.